Hey everyone, this is Michael again, and welcome to the AEW Dynamite review. Dynamite tonight was from the LJVM Coliseum in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and the show ended. And Dynamite tonight, what a bland, boring show this was tonight. What terrible show. I mean, look what we got on the show tonight. We had MJF versus Kyle Fletcher in an American Championship Eliminator match. Then we had Mariah May. She was in action, and she had taken on Viva. We had Katsuyori Shibata versus Bryan of the Learning Tree. We had FTR and Orange Cassidy versus Beast Mortos, Rouge, and Roderick Strong. Kamille was in action. Mercedes Moné's new protege. She was in a 2-on-1 handicap match. She ended up taking on Jazmine, and Clara Carter. And the main event, we had an Anything Goes match. Bryan Danielson versus Jeff Jarrett. So yeah, that was your card for Dynamite tonight. Outside of MJF versus Kyle Fletcher and Bryan Danielson versus Jeff Jarrett, you missed nothing. If you didn't watch the show tonight, you did not miss a damn thing. But what a bland, boring Dynamite tonight it was. Terrible. But let's jump right into the review. And I heard that, some of the AEW talent, they were having travel issues getting to Dynamite tonight because it took place in North Carolina, and of course the Carolinas are getting hit by the tropical storm, Tropical Storm Debbie. So travel issues have plagued for the talent, trying to make it to Dynamite tonight. But Dynamite opened up tonight with the first match, MJF versus Kyle Fletcher. This was an American Championship Eliminator match, and this was a very good match here to kick off Dynamite tonight. MJF, the American Champion, he made his way to the ring, got boos from the crowd there, and Will Ospreay, he was backstage looking on, watching MJF make his way out. So as MJF got into the ring, we had a American flag draped down from the ceiling, and instead of the 50 stars on the flag, we had MJF's face on it. Faces of MJF. In the portion where the 50 stars are supposed to be. And then Kyle Fletcher ended up coming out, and the match got underway. Don Callis was on commentary for the match here. So MJF grabbed the mic. He had telling the fans to shut up. MJF then told Kyle Fletcher that he would lock up with him like a man, or he takes his American Championship and walks out of town. So pretty much basically MJF, wanted Kyle Fletcher to lock up with him like a man, or you get out of North Carolina. So MJF got into the ring, and he ended up kicking Fletcher. Fletcher then rolled up MJF, and MJF kicked out at one. Fletcher attempted another pin on MJF, but MJF kicked out of that. Fletcher then scooped MJF up and slammed him down to the canvas. MJF then rolled out of the ring. So Fletcher was going for a dive to MJF, but MJF ended up delivering an elbow to him. MJF then starts jawing at Fletcher, telling Fletcher that he sucks. Fletcher then picked up MJF, but MJF ended up countering out of it. He then grabbed Kyle Fletcher's arm and sent him into the turnbuckle. So MJF taunted Fletcher more and started stomping on Fletcher's hand. MJF put Fletcher in an armbar. He ended up telling Fletcher that nobody cares about him. So MJF doing a lot of trash talking to Fletcher here. MJF then picked up Fletcher, started twisting his arm. He ended up sending Fletcher down to the canvas. MJF then picked up Fletcher, and he delivered a shoulder breaker to Fletcher. MJF then worked on Fletcher's left arm. He then picked up Fletcher and dropped him down to the canvas. MJF then ended up going for the cover on Fletcher, but Fletcher kicked out. So MJF then ended up charging at Fletcher, who ended up getting a big boot. He ended up catching MJF under his chin. So both guys were down at this point. So Fletcher ended up charging at MJF and nailed MJF with some right hands. MJF then ended up charging at Fletcher. He ended up getting caught by him, and he ended up slamming MJF down to the canvas. Fletcher then ended up going for the cover, but MJF ended up kicking out. MJF then once again worked on Fletcher's arm, and we had Fletcher end up breaking the hold. Fletcher then ended up sending MJF out to the floor. Fletcher then ended up running through the ropes, and he sent MJF into the barricade. MJF then rolled back into the ring, and he then rolled back out to avoid Fletcher coming off the top rope. So Fletcher was on the ropes, and he landed a moonsault to MJF on the floor, which looked great. So MJF was back in the ring. Fletcher was up on the top rope. MJF then rolled out of the ring, and he sat on the chair next to the barricade. He was asking for a timeout. So Fletcher then ended up nailing MJF with some right hands. Fletcher then ended up charging at MJF, but MJF ended up moving out of the way as Fletcher ended up crashing into the barricade. MJF then was shown biting Fletcher's forehead. So as MJF ended up coming toward Fletcher, MJF was then sent over the barricade. Fletcher then ended up leaping over the barricade onto MJF, and the fans there went crazy. Fletcher was in the stands just being down on MJF. Fletcher then ended up sending MJF back over the barricade, and he rolled MJF back into the ring. Fletcher went to the top rope, and he delivered a huge elbow on MJF. He then went for the cover, and MJF ended up kicking out too. So MJF ended up driving Fletcher's shoulder into the canvas. Fletcher then tried to pick up MJF, but we had MJF end up countering. Fletcher then picked up MJF once again, but MJF ended up countering that again, and he rolled up Fletcher, and Fletcher ended up kicking out. Fletcher then once again tried to pick up MJF, but MJF ended up countering, and he ended up dropping Fletcher on his back. MJF then ended up picking up Fletcher, and he ended up delivering a DDT to him. MJF then ended up going for the cover. Fletcher kicked out. So Fletcher was down, and MJF got up. He ended up kicking Fletcher in the head. MJF then ended up slapping Fletcher. He ended up calling Fletcher a nothing, and also a wannabe Osprey. So MJF then ended up charging at Fletcher, but MJF was then met with a big boot to his face from Fletcher. So at the end of the match, we had Don Callis end up coming down. He distracted the ref, and he tossed a screwdriver to Fletcher. Fletcher was thinking about using the screwdriver on MJF, but Fletcher ended up tossing the screwdriver out of the ring. MJF then low-blowed Fletcher because the ref's back was turned. MJF then hit Fletcher with a big kick, and he ended up dropping Fletcher with a brainbuster. MJF ended up going for the cover, and there you go. MJF ended up winning the match. Post-match, Osprey was shown locked in a room. So he ended up trying to get out of the room, and somebody put some production crates near the door. So eventually Osprey ended up getting out of the room. MJF then knocked out Paul Turner, the referee, with the American Championship. MJF then put on the Dynamite Diamond ring, and he ended up nailing Fletcher with the ring as Fletcher ended up getting back to his feet. MJF then started to continue to assault Fletcher, to which Fletcher was shown busted open, bleeding from the ring, from the Dynamite Diamond ring hit from MJF. So MJF then yelled at the camera. He ended up saying to Ospreay, "The blood is on your hands." MJF then picked up Fletcher. He ended up calling for the Tiger Driver. Of course, Ospreay's, finishing move. But Ospreay ended up making it into the ring to save Fletcher. MJF ended up fleeing the hell out of the ring and escaping through the crowd. Ospreay ended up calling for, medical staff to come check on Fletcher as Don Callis was in the ring. So, Doc Sampson was in the ring. He checked on Fletcher. Ospreay ended up looking on, and he had Fletcher's blood all over his shirt. So Don Callis ended up asking, where Ospreay was, because he was locked in the room. He was trapped in there. Somebody put production crates near the door. So pretty much that was basically that. But overall, very good match this was between MJF and Kyle Fletcher here. Very entertaining. The crowd was really into it. But obviously, MJF, of course, had to come out with the win. This was a American Championship Eliminator match. So if Kyle Fletcher won, he would get a shot at the American Championship. He'll face MJF. But, of course, since MJF won, Kyle Fletcher, will not get a American Championship opportunity. And this is when the show goes into the shitter. So we had Mariah May versus Viva Van. And this was a squash match here. Just momentum for Mariah May before she heads into her match with Toni Storm at All In. So Mariah May won the match. Mariah May ended up picking up Vivian Van, dropped her with a Storm Zero. Toni Storm's finishing move. She ended up going for the cover on Van, and Mariah May ended up winning the match. Nothing for me to discuss in this match. Absolutely just a squash match. Post-match, there was a gift being handed to Mariah May. So Mariah May opened up the gift, and the gift was a photo of Toni Storm cuddling Mariah May. And there was something written on the back of the photo. So Mariah May turned it around and said, "Die, Mariah, die," on the back. So Toni Storm entered the ring, and she attacked Mariah May. Mariah May then ended up kicking Toni Storm. Mariah May then grabbed the shoe that she ended up hitting Toni Storm with, bleeding her, like crazy. Yeah, she's still carrying around that shoe. So Toni Storm took the shoe from Mariah May. Toni Storm then ended up going to nail Mariah May with the shoe, but pretty fast officials and refs end up coming down to break Toni Storm and Mariah May up. So both Mariah May and Toni Storm end up breaking free as officials and security end up holding back both of them. So pretty much that was basically that. And then we had a vignette of Jack Perry. Jack Perry was watching, footage of some of Darby Allin's matches, and then, he appeared on the screen. Jack Perry. Pretty much it was basically that. And then as Dynamite came back from the commercial, Darby Allin was backstage. Darby Allin was talking about Jack Perry and telling him that he doesn't have to show up at Rampage or Collision, but he has to show up at All In. So that was pretty much basically what Darby Allin, had to say, calling out, Jack Perry. And then we have Bryan Keith versus Katsuyori Shibata. Bryan Keith ended up making his way out first. And then, of course, we got the Learning Tree music ended up hitting. Chris Jericho comes out. Hi, guys. Hi, everybody. And also Big Bill ended up making his way out. My God. Can we get this gimmick to end already? Tired of seeing the Learning Tree every single fucking week on TV. Jericho, please go tour with your band Fozzy. Stay off TV for a while. Please. Nobody wants to see this. So, Jericho and Big Bill end up joining, Tony Schiavone and Excalibur on commentary. Taz had to be removed from commentary for the match. So, and then you got Jericho first getting on commentary. Hi, guys. God. Man, what a boring match this was. This is a match that you would see on Rampage. I mean, did you all give a shit about this match? I know I didn't. So, Katsuyori Shibata came out next. Match got on the way. We had Bryan Keith end up charging at Shibata, and he ended up nailing Shibata as the bell rang. Shibata ended up coming back. He took down Bryan Keith. He had Keith locked up and stopped on Keith's left elbow. So Bryan Keith ended up rolling out of the ring. He was selling the stomp of his left elbow from Shibata. He rolled out of the ring in pain. Shibata ended up going to the floor, but Bryan Keith ended up sending Shibata into the barricade. Keith then ended up kicking Shibata as he ended up going down on the floor. Bryan Keith then stomped on Shibata's left arm, and then Dynamite went to commercial. Then when Dynamite came back from the commercial, Shibata tried to fight back at Bryan Keith, but Bryan Keith ended up kicking Shibata and ended up sending him down. Bryan Keith ended up picking up Shibata, slammed him down. Bryan Keith tried to pick up Shibata again, and then he ended up headbutting Shibata in the jaw. Shibata then ended up sending Bryan Keith down to the mat. He put Bryan Keith in an armbar, and Bryan Keith ended up submitting, so Katsuyori Shibata ended up winning the match. Post-match, Jericho and Big Bill ended up running down to take out Shibata, so we had a 3-on-1 beatdown, because Jericho, Big Bill, and Bryan Keith were beating down Shibata. So, as Jericho ended up going to nail Shibata, we had the return of Hook. Hook ended up running down to the ring. He took out Big Bill and Bryan Keith. He ended up, taking out Big Bill over the top. Hook and Jericho ended up brawling in the ring. Hook got the upper hand, and Hook ended up going to suplex Jericho, but Jericho ended up escaping out of the ring and retreated. And pretty much, that was basically that. Did you care? No. Did I care? No. Please, can we get the Learning Tree off of TV for one fucking week? Please. Maybe even more. Nobody wants to see this awful fucking cringe gimmick on TV. One of Chris Jericho's worst gimmicks. Hi, guys. Hi, everybody. It's like he's making a fool out of himself every single week. And then we have Renee Paquette. Renee Paquette was backstage. She was talking to Orange Cassidy about his match tonight, taking on, Roosh, Roderick Strong, and the Beast Mortos. So we didn't know who Orange Cassidy was going to team with. So Orange Cassidy ended up saying that he has a couple of local talent that will stand in with him, as the rest, of his teammates could not make it because of the travel issues. Like I said, before I started the review. There were travel issues with some of the talent. They couldn't make it to Dynamite tonight because of the tropical storm. It's happening down in the Carolinas. Some of the remnants of Tropical Storm Debbie is moving up to the East Coast here, in New York. Should be coming Friday and into early morning Saturday. We got rain all week here in New York. It's too much rain. So then as Dynamite came back from the commercial, Renee Paquette was backstage talking to Hangman and Paige about Paige losing to Darby Allin. Paige ended up saying that there is one man he has wanted. He ended up telling Renee that he will have what he wants. So pretty much that was basically what, Hangman and Paige, had to say. And then we had Orange Cassidy and his local talent teammates who will stand in with him was the top guys, FTR, Dax Harwood, and Cash Wheeler. So they ended up taking on Roosh, Roderick Strong, and the Beast Mortos. And this was just a very meh match here. Didn't even care for it. So Roosh and Dax started off the match. Both Roosh and Dax locked up. Roosh ended up chopping Dax in his chest in the corner. Mortos then tripped Dax. Mortos tagged in Roderick Strong. Dax ended up chopping Strong. Cash Wheeler was then tagged in. He ended up nailing Strong and then sent him to the corner. Orange Cassidy was tagged in. He then tagged in Dax. So we had Orange Cassidy and, Dax Harwood end up double teaming on Roderick Strong. So Orange Cassidy was tagged in. He ended up dropping an elbow on Roderick Strong. FTR and Orange Cassidy ended up sending, them to the floor. So then Dynamite went to commercial. Then when Dynamite came back from the commercial, Strong was then tagged in. And we had, later on, Mortos ended up going for the cover on Cash, but Cash kicked out. Strong was then tagged in. He had Cash in the headlock. Cash ended up fighting back. He ended up trying to go for a tag, but Roderick Strong ended up holding Cash back. So Roderick Strong ended up driving Cash Wheeler down with a backbreaker. Cash ended up rolling up Roderick Strong, but Roderick Strong kicked out. Cash then tagged in Dax, who ended up taking out Roderick Strong. And he also took out Mortos and Roosh. Dax then ended up taking down Mortos with a spine buster. Dax ended up rolling up Strong, and Strong ended up kicking out. Dax then ended up taking down Strong. He ended up going for another pin attempt, but Strong kicked out. Then we saw Mike Bennett and Matt Taven. They were looking on from ringside. Dax and Strong were up on the top rope. Strong ended up escaping, and Mortos ended up making the blind tag. So we had Mortos end up flying from the top rope, laying on Dax. Mortos ended up going for the cover on Dax, but Dax kicked out. So Mike Bennett and Matt Taven later on, they ended up taking out Dax on the floor because the ref was distracted. So then at the end of the match, we had Orange Cassidy end up delivering Roosh with an orange punch. Roosh ended up recovering, and he ended up chopping, both Wheeler and also Dax Harwood. So Orange Cassidy and FTR ended up fighting back. Dax ended up dropping Roosh, and Dax ended up going for the cover. And there you go. FTR and Orange Cassidy ended up winning the match. Post-match, the Acclaim's music ended up hitting. Dax ended up having a mic. He ended up saying that it looks like the mic guys don't want him to talk. Dax ended up saying that he appreciates all the Acclaim to have done for AEW. But this is beyond AEW. And then we had a brawl ensue between the Acclaimed and FTR. And pretty much that was basically that. But overall, this match was very meh, in my opinion. And then we had Christian Cage. Christian Cage was hyping up the match between the Bang Bang Gang and the House of Black, which is going to be this Saturday on Collision. And the winners of that match will become the number one contenders for the trios titles. Christian then ended up saying that the winners will get a title shot at All In. And he ended up saying for that match, he will be the special guest referee. So there you go. And I forgot to mention before the Orange Cassidy FTR, Beast Mortos, Roderick Strong, and Rouge match, we had a sit-down interview with Swerve Strickland. Jim Ross was interviewing Swerve. Swerve ended up saying to Jim Ross that he's beyond motivated, and going from a tag match to the main event means the world to him. Swerve ended up saying that if the roles were reversed, would anyone give a damn about him being on his way out? And that they shouldn't. He ended up going on to say that he doesn't care about Bryan being a parent. He ended up asking what happens when his body gives out. Swerve ended up saying that everybody always talks about what they're going to do to inflict pain on someone else. And what do you do when your body doesn't work? Swerve ended up saying not only can he beat Bryan, he will beat Bryan. And then his legacy will belong to him, to Swerve. So it was a pretty decent interview with Swerve Strickland, Jim Ross interviewing him. But just wanted to mention that. And then we got a 2-on-1 handicap match. Kamille versus Jazmine, Heyo, and Clara Carter. Do I even need to say who won this match? If you said Kamille, ding, 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 you are right. So post-match, Mercedes Mone ended up getting on the mic. She ended up saying, say hello to the Brick House, Kamille. Mercedes ended up saying that Britt Baker is suspended until All In. Yeah, because news of Britt Baker, coming out, talking shit about MJF and MJF's, girlfriend. She was suspended because of that. So Mercedes ended up saying that Britt Baker is not here tonight. She then talked about how Britt was the first, but never the best. And Mercedes ended up saying that she is the best in AEW. Same old shit that Mercedes does every single week. She delivers the same promo every single week. So Tony Schiavone ended up interrupting Mercedes. Tony Schiavone ended up saying, Christopher Daniels and also Tony Khan has overruled the Elite and has lifted the suspension of Britt Baker. So Tony Schiavone ended up saying Britt Baker is via satellite. So Britt Baker was on the screen. She ended up saying that when things don't go Mercedes' way, she takes her ball and goes home. So Britt Baker ended up saying that AEW is just the flavor of the month for her. She ended up saying that All In, she will be the first woman in AEW to beat Mercedes Mone. So that was pretty much what Britt Baker had to say. But like I said, Mercedes Mone is the same promo she delivers every single week. Oh, say hello to Kamille. Oh, I'm the best in AEW. Oh, Britt Baker. It's like that. It's the same old. Are we going to get the same thing next week? Main event. Jeff Jarrett versus Bryan Danielson. Anything goes match. And Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, the legend, was present here. But Ricky Steamboat, he was just here to collect a paycheck. That's all he was there for. But this was a very good main event here. Did this match need to take place? No. This was only done because Bryan wanted to show how all in he could go. So he ended up making the match last week. saying, I want to face you, Jeff Jarrett. Then you'll see how all in I could go. So we have Bryan Danielson end up coming out first. He got a good ovation from the crowd. Jeff Jarrett then nailed Bryan from behind with a guitar. So Karen Jarrett and Jay Lethal end up coming out, and they were like to Jeff Jarrett, what are you doing? So Jeff Jarrett ended up sending Bryan into the ring. The match got underway. Jarrett ended up sending Bryan to the floor. He ended up sending Bryan over the barricade, and Jeff Jarrett and Bryan end up fighting, through the stands. So both guys kept making their way to the upper level. The fight continued between Bryan and Jarrett into the concourse area where the concessions are. So Jeff Jarrett ended up grabbing a trash can. He tossed the trash can at Bryan. Bryan then started to fight back. Bryan then grabbed another trash can, and he nailed Jarrett with it. Bryan then ended up kicking Jarrett, but we had Jarrett end up coming back. He low-blowed Bryan. It's all legal because anything goes. So Jarrett ended up picking up Bryan, ended up dropping him, and fans were chanting, holy shit, there was a whole crowd there in the concourse area. So Jarrett then suplexed Bryan on a trash can. Jarrett then ended up nailing Bryan with a right hand. Jarrett continued his assault on Bryan with some right hands. Bryan then turned things around, and he suplexed Jarrett on the trash can. So then Dynamite went to commercial. Then when Dynamite came back from the commercial, Jarrett was in control of the match. He ended up hitting Bryan in his right knee with a chair. Swerve and Prince Nana were shown backstage watching the match, looking on. Jarrett then ended up nailing Bryan with some right hands. Jarrett then ended up sending Bryan into the turnbuckle. Bryan ended up coming back. He ended up delivering an elbow strike to Jarrett's face. Bryan then ended up charging at Jarrett, and Bryan connected with a shotgun dropkick to Jarrett. Bryan then ended up nailing Jarrett, and Bryan ended up biting him. Bryan then ended up sending Jarrett to the floor. He ended up going flying through the ropes, knocking Jarrett down. Bryan ended up sending Jarrett into the barricade. Jarrett then sat in a chair. Bryan then ended up kicking Jarrett, and then Bryan connected with a run dropkick on Jarrett. Bryan then sent Jarrett into the ring steps, to the steel steps, and from the apron, Bryan leapt off of the apron, and Jarrett ended up hitting Bryan with a steel chair. So both guys ended up going back into the ring. Jarrett ended up trapping Bryan's leg in the chair. Jarrett went to the top rope, but Bryan was up, and he nailed Jarrett with the chair. Bryan then ended up sending Jarrett to the canvas with a suplex. Bryan then went up to the top rope, and he came off the top rope. He ended up dropping Jarrett with a missile drop kick. So Jarrett then locked in the figure four on Bryan. Bryan started to break free of the figure four by hitting Jarrett in his knees with the steel chair. Jarrett then dropped Bryan on the chair with a stroke, and then he ended up locking in the sharpshooter. Bryan counted the sharpshooter, and he put Jarrett in the label lock. Jarrett then ended up breaking free of the label lock. So both guys were exchanging blows. So Jarrett ended up going for a stroke, but Bryan ended up countering that. Bryan then grabbed a steel chair, and he used the chair to deliver the Busaiku knee to Jarrett. So Bryan ended up going for the cover, and there you go. Bryan ended up winning the match. Post-match, Karen Jarrett, Sanjay Dutt, and Jay Lethal ended up coming down to check on Jarrett. Wheeler Yuta also ended up coming down to check on Bryan. Ricky the Dragon Steamboat came into the ring to check on Bryan, and then he came in to check on Jarrett. Jarrett was shown bleeding from his ear because of the Busaiku knee to him from Bryan with the chair. So Ricky the Dragon Steamboat raised both Bryan and Jarrett's hands in the air. Bryan and Jarrett end up shaking hands. They end up hugging it out. So then Swerve's music ended up hitting. Swerve ended up coming out along with Prince Nana. Of course, Prince Nana did the dance. Never gets old to see Prince Nana do the dance. Swerve grabbed the mic. Swerve ended up saying that we witnessed 3 great legends on TBS before our eyes. He ended up saying now we get to see him. Swerve ended up saying that these are all men who have defined wrestling on TBS. He ended up saying that the only thing standing between Bryan and the title is himself. Swerve ended up saying that he will retire Bryan at All In, and his legacy will be his. So Swerve ended up asking Bryan how he is feeling after the match. Swerve ended up saying, imagine what he will do to Bryan. A great test. So Swerve ended up saying that he wants a test before All In. So Swerve ended up saying, oh, how about next week on Dynamite, I go one-on-one with Wheeler Yuta. Swerve ended up saying that he wants Bryan to have a front row seat to show Bryan why he is the most dangerous man in AEW. So that was pretty much how Dynamite went off the air. But overall, this was a good main event between Bryan and Jarrett here. I mean, did the match really need to happen? No. But still, it was a good match here. And like I said, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat was just there for a paycheck. But overall, what a bland and boring Dynamite this was. If you missed the show, you did not miss a single thing. Outside of Bryan Danielson and Jeff Jarrett and MJF and Kyle Fletcher, this show was just absolutely awful. But anyway, that's it for the Dynamite review. Thank you all for watching. Hope you all enjoyed this review. Definitely give the video a thumbs up, comment, subscribe, and I will see you all on Friday for SmackDown. So, see you guys then.